Hi everyone, how you going? I just thought I'd stop in. I've got a big gripe with domestic violence services. So last year I attended a QCOS conference in Queensland, okay? And I happened to be sitting at a table with DV Connect. And they had been assisting parents involved with domestic violence, with getting them through, the refuge and into transitional housing and into housing. And they'd been sending parents to Bundaberg, which meant they were getting put on the card. And they were all shocked when I told them about the card and said, how can you do that to these people? The minute they get up there, they get put on the cashless debit card. Oh, we didn't know. So I've just been speaking to a lady in my message box. Was living in Perth, right? Perth is not a card area, okay? Due to domestic violence and him breaking a restraining order and not only beating her up, but also beating their child up. She sent me the photos. It's absolutely disgusting. Right? He broke into their domestic violence safety house. So they were put back into another refuge. But it gets worse. Because Child Protective Services basically turned around and said if she didn't leave, they would take her kids. Okay? Because it comes under fail to protect. So she had no choice. She had to leave. Domestic Violence Services gave her a choice of Ceduna or Bundaberg, both cashless debit card regions. Right? This lady chose Ceduna because it's close to another family member that she hadn't seen for a long time. And at least she can get some support in that way. But, of course, as soon as she got to Ceduna, she was put on the card. Now, she's on a disability support pension. And the thing with this is, right, the only two options that the refuge gave her was Ceduna or Bundaberg, both cashless debit card regions. She has never had control of her disability support pension, right? Because her ex-partner controlled her disability support pension, right? And he used to control her and her money. And now she's controlled by Indu. And she says it's a form of abuse. I'm sure of it. Yes, it is abuse. But to send somebody who's been financially controlled by their ex-partner, right, she's never had independent control of her disability support pension ever. She's never not been controlled by somebody. Her abuser, her ex, right, controlled her income. And then the domestic violence services sent her to Ceduna and Indu. I am absolutely furious that domestic violence services would even consider sending parents, right, that are survivors of, this is very violent abuse, financial and physical abuse. Parents who are traumatised, kids that are traumatised. And the only options were Ceduna or Bundaberg. Plenty of other places they could have housed her, and they could have housed her in a similar region to where her family member is without her having to go on the card. I'm sure of it. Right? And then, she arrived, she's been stuck on the card for just over a year now. Right? And, I'm just gobsmacked that surely social workers and psychologists could not recommend sending DV traumatised parents and kids to regions where they're going to be segregated, controlled, and financially controlled and belittled even more by the government and by the people around them because of the stigma that's associated with the card. I'm livid. This is disgusting. You know, she had the choice of Ceduna or Bundaberg, but why only those two regions? I mean, when she arrived, she had a bag of clothes. That was it. And don't think that doesn't happen. When I lived in transitional housing myself, a lady moved into the unit behind me, and they'd been bounced around from Brisbane to Airlie Beach to Bundaberg shelter, and then she'd ended up getting the transitional housing unit behind me. She moved in with a 9-month-old baby, 2 bags of clothes, some cushions and a pillow and a blanket, right, and an esky for a fridge. And she had to leave most of her belongings at the shelter in Bundaberg because they wouldn't let her bring it down on the bus. So she'd lost a lot of her clothing and shoes. And I put a call out for some help, and within 2 days the local community furnished that unit for her and helped her with a second-hand washing machine and a fridge and a table and chairs and a couch and a cot for the baby and toys and clothes. Because there is good people in our community, even though they're very quiet. But people fleeing domestic violence, entering into transitional housing, walk in with whatever bag they've got. And to be put on the card so they can't even buy second-hand stuff off of the Facebook sites. Oh. You know, I feel really bad for people like this. Yeah, it's not good enough. It is not good enough. And I think domestic violence services need to wake up to what the cashless debit card is. You don't fix people, or you don't allow people to heal by putting them in a position of being segregated and having their human rights removed and their protections under law removed. That's not going to help these people heal. I'm not happy about this at all. And yes, she's already been knocked back on an attempt to opt out. And yes, I will help her to try and appeal. Because how can she ever heal from the domestic violence abuse that she copped in the first place when she can't have her autonomy, her financial autonomy, her self-determination? For this lady and her family, it's like being in the same situation, except for the physical side. The person that was causing the physical abuse is no longer there, but the government's using the financial abuse. The control is still there, which causes PTSD and other mental health issues. It's just not good enough. I'm sick to death of the disrespect of women and parents in this country. And to see that domestic violence refugees are sending people to card areas deliberately. How can it not be deliberate when the only choice she was given was Ceduna or Bundaberg? Both knowingly cashless debit card areas. Alison says here, ASIC had given them a letter saying that they are immune from being prosecuted for breaking the law. That letter was only for the first trial, Alison. So there is dispute now because of how many people were forced onto that card. She's been forced onto that card within the last 12 months. So therefore, her consumer rights have been breached under law because she was not part of the first trial. All right? This is disgusting. And I'm going to encourage this lady and try and empower her and give her the confidence and the support she needs to be able to get some help from senators and try and get off this card and try and get her life back. She sent me the photos of the damage he's done. And it's horrific. Not just what he did to her, but he hit his own child as well. And it's horrendous. Leaving with the child with lifelong, permanent damage. And the trauma and the PTSD for that child as well. But that child's now growing up, being re-traumatised by the government because mum was on the card. Sometimes this government, how cruel can you be? And I'm sure there's other parents out there that are in similar situations that have not come forward and not sent me their messages and stuff like that. I am so angry. People need to be able to go to a domestic violence service and have faith and trust that those people are going to look after them and not put them in a position where they're going to be worse off or re-traumatised or re-abused again just because of the government policy that does that. And I used to say, don't all of these service providers have in their charter that they're supposed to protect people's human rights under international law? Seriously, throwing a single parent out of the frying pan and into the fire? My God. You know? Her daughter is now on NDIS for life as well. This is just sick. You know, this is just sick. I don't know. You can see I don't know. I can't find the right words and I'm trying not to swear. If I was on my own page, there would be F-bombs dropping everywhere. Believe me, this has riled me right up. Right? It is just not good enough. Women are not sub-citizens, sub-humans. Neither are their children. And I hate to sound sexist. Yes, there's plenty of guys on this card too. But I'm sick to death of seeing in the stats the biggest amount of people on this card are women, right? Single parents on disability, right? Or carers, or basically just single parents, but the majority are women. And their kids are suffering. Right? And threatening a woman was saying, if you don't leave, child services will remove your children for failing to protect. Yeah, I can understand that, but you don't take them away and put them in another worse situation where they have no autonomy, no ability to make their own friggin' decisions because they're controlled by somebody on the other end of the bloody phone. I'm furious. And I want people to get angry about this sort of stuff. DV services all across the country cannot, in good faith, start, and they've been doing this for the last couple of years, right? I know they have, because I found out about it way before I spoke to DV Connect in Brisbane, right? That they'd been sending people up because when the card was announced for coming here, we don't have a lot of commission houses, but yes, some got emptied really quick. People got out of the area. And this, you know, so anybody who was in transitional housing coming out of DV services in Brisbane was, we've got a house for you in Bundaberg. And they claimed that they didn't know that the people were being put on the card once they got up here. One of the biggest issues I have is I've got lots of stories from lots of parents. They won't come out publicly because they are survivors of domestic violence. They are in hiding from abusive partners and they are too scared to come out in public, right, and show their face because they don't want to be found by their abusers. All right? So this is one of the reasons why I have so many, a lot of the times when I do live videos about people's situations, I don't use their names, I don't tell you which area they're in normally, you know what I mean? And I do everything, I get consent first to do it, of course, to tell you their stories, but I can't divulge their information because, you know, they're scared. The government knew which people to target. People least able to be able to come out public and stand up for their rights. People who have been abused, traumatised. This is disgusting. And we need to make this change. And the only way we're going to be able to do this is to really get serious about, let's get rid of this bloody government. Let's get Labor to change things. That includes Mark McGowan's government. Right? He's the Labor Premier. If you're in WA and you don't like this, ring him up and say, hey, this isn't good enough. Not good enough. You know, I can understand this person chose to do that because it's close to a family member. But why couldn't you go and live in the same town as the family member or in another town closer but that's not on the card? Why did they have to send her to the card region? They can't say after 3 years of it being into Kalgoorlie and the massive area that it's in over there that they didn't know that would happen. The 5 years that the card's been in Seduna, they can't say they didn't know it wasn't a card area. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm furious. This is just not good enough. The Greens are against the card. They've been solidly against the card all the way through, Beryl. Right? But ALP are also against the card. Right? ALP are staunchly against the cashless debit card, the compulsory nature of it, and the fact that the person is contracted without their consent to a private company. It's taken a while to get there, but they're there, okay? So Labor are also against the cashless debit card. Labor support voluntary informed consent, right? Income management. Whole different ball game, similar to the Cape York program, where the person is in control. All right? Nick Adler, go and have a look at the Senate videos, right? Beryl, you say you're not hearing them. Go on to Milandari McCarthy's page. Look through some of their pages. Murdoch Media. Don't let ALP have lots of media. You know, they're the opposition. Then don't you understand that every time Albo stands up in Parliament to have a go at something, the other side stands up and says, Mr. Speaker, I move a motion that the member no longer be heard? That means that they can't speak in Parliament. Do you know how many times that's happened in the last 12 months? Every time Labor stood up to try and do something and be in opposition? All right? The only way we're going to change this is change government. Irrespective of whether you're not hearing them loud enough or whatever, right? LNP, One Nation, Clive Palmer and Centre Alliance are the ones that have kept this card in play. And they will keep it in play. So we need to get rid of them. Even Jackie Lambie voted against the card at the last vote. Right? And she was staunch 100% for it. But she could see it's failed and it's failing people. Right? So, yeah, we're not going to do Greens against Labor on this page and pit-pat, pit-pat. At the moment, Labor voted against it. Greens voted against it. Jackie Lambie voted against it. Senator Rex Patrick voted against it. Okay? Go and see the post, how they vote. Right? and then see how your local member voted. And remember that when it comes down to voting time. And if your local member voted for the card, don't vote for them. Simple as that. Vote for people who voted against the card on the 9th of December before Christmas. Okay? I'm going to go, but yeah. And I'm going to make some phone calls too. Hang on, just something else just came in. Just bear with me. Okay, so when she was in transition housing in Sedona, she asked if she could move to the town where her family member was, because she's disabled and she needed the support from the... And she was told no. They're selling all government housing off. Cruel, eh? Yeah, so anyway, we need to stand together. Greens, ALP, stand up together. Whichever one you vote for, right? Okay? We have to stand up as a community. Like I said way back at the beginning, I stand between the Greens and Labor. We fight this as a community, irrespective of what their political differences are. The fact is that we've gone from the Greens staunchly saying no to ALP supporting it originally, then going it's voluntary, then not supporting it at all because they've realised how it works is a good turnaround. Kathy says, so it looks like they're keeping government housing in card zones. If you look at the structure of how it's set up, it's designed to be that if you were in public housing, you wouldn't have the rent problems, so to speak. Well, you would anyway, because public housing, you can use centre pay automatically. But so people could still be... their rents would be secure on their centre pay in public housing. Indu was badly designed. It doesn't allow for private rentals. It doesn't allow for share housing, periodic leases, all the different ways that people rent and how they pay their rents. It was designed on a model of everybody would be in public housing that was using it. So therefore they could use centre pay for their rent, so there wouldn't be any problems with their rent. You know, that sort of thing. But it doesn't work that way. There isn't enough government housing left to put everybody that's on a card in a public housing property. It's just not that much left. It's all been sold off in the last 30 years anyway. But that shows us that the Liberal Marshall government, right, is going to continue selling off the remainder of the housing trust properties when we've got a housing crisis across the country. This is just ludicrous. It's just ludicrous. It just really is. I mean, they've made stacks off of that land because of the overinflated property values. I'm disgusted with the whole lot of it. So, yes, as we head towards an election, right, be very aware of who voted for what and just don't vote for them. If they voted for the card, you don't vote for them. You know, look at the policies. Don't look at the candidate. Look at the policies, okay? It's not about the actual whether you like Albo or not. Is it the policy the party's putting forward? If they're against the card and you're against the card and you don't want to see the card, then that's it. You vote either ALP or Greens, either or. But we've got to get a change of government going here, and we've got to get rid of this nasty LNP. All they're doing is destroying the working classes, the low-paid workers, right, the unemployed, the sick, the disabled, the students, our youth, right, the pensioners, the old, everybody. They're destroying everybody. And we need everybody to stand up together, you know. Anyway, I want to go because I'm going to bust a chuffer off. I'm just so frustrated with this, and I'm going to make some phone calls because I've got to blow some steam off somewhere, and this is not good enough. It's absolutely disgusting. How dare domestic violence services place parents in a situation of out of the fire and into the frying pan again? You know what I mean? It's disgusting. It's not on and it's not right. It's morally and ethically wrong. You know, it makes me wonder what's in it for them. Oh, we'll just keep your funding up so you can grease their palms as well. A lot of this, there's a lot of money tied up around here, and that just drives me nuts. Do you know what I mean? Beryl says here, a colleague was awarded the Order of Australia for work in communities in Western Australian goldfields, then weeks later placed on the card. I think I might know who you're talking about there. Disgusting, isn't it? What a reward. Same as a lady that I knew in Kununurra, 40 years working in the education department, and she stood down to look after her grandkids. It got bang, put on the card. There was a guy who was an ex-police officer, ex-community services worker, youth worker, and ex-correctional services worker, right? Put on the card because he stepped down to assist with caring responsibilities for a disabled brother. He has since managed to get off the card on the opt-out, but I don't believe I haven't heard whether the rest of the family's been let off yet either. You know, this is not about drugs, alcohol and gambling. This is about privatisation of Social Security at the cost of the community. Right? As Alan Tudge said way back at the beginning, this is about taking the welfare dollars out of your community, but it's also about stripping the dignity away and putting the boot down on people. This is apartheid. Bottom line, there it is, out there in the open. When you remove people's human rights protections, their Social Security protections of payments protection, when you remove their consumer protections at law, the new bill coming through in March removes people's statutory rights protections, right? When you remove people out of the protection of rule of law, right, you place them outside of our protections, which is supposed to protect all citizens, and then you hand over their financial fiduciary and everything to a private company who's not accountable to you, not accountable to the Senate or the government, doesn't even have to appear at a Senate inquiry ever, right? Doesn't have to answer questions as to how their staff treat people, what they say to people, right? It's not good enough. Australians are not for sale. And this is it. 12 grand to set the card up, and then 80% of that person's income is no longer theirs anymore because it's being freely given. Public money is being freely given to Indu, and they own the money. I was actually talking to people today in town, and I had a really good conversation with these people, but when I said it to them, that the setup cost, then the 80% of that person's income. For the first time ever, it was really good to have two strangers go, oh my God, they're handing over the Social Security budget to private company. In March, they'll do the same for those that may end up having to go onto the cashless debit card, which we hope they don't. The basics card, you're still protected, guys, okay, under the law. Cashless debit card, you're not. Right? And the contract in the Northern Territory is a Northern Territory credit union. They're the card provider for the Northern Territory. Because they're trying to get the banks in. The banks are in talks. NAB, Westpac, the big four are in talks. And all the credit unions are in talks to do it through credit unions and hand all the control to the banks. And then the government can walk away after they've privatised it all and have nothing to do with social services whatsoever, because job agencies, Parents Next, cash just debit card, right? Making pensioners reverse mortgage their homes to pay for their own pensions, or trying to get workers to take less wages to have more super, blah, blah, blah. It's all about screwing the people. And it's about control. But it's about profits for big corporate business, private people making money. Right? Indu is owned by a conglomerate of credit unions. And they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts to help people. They're not qualified in social services to help people. They're in the business of making money. That's what they do. Anyway, I'm going to go because I'm going to rant else, and I'll talk to you guys later. Keep up the fight. We will. I'll be in Brisbane on Tuesday at Musgrave Park. If anybody wants to come and catch up with me, if you want to make any donations to our account, please message me, message the page. We could appreciate whatever you can help with, because I'm taking another card holder from Bundaberg down. It all costs money to be able to transport people around the state and do things, but we'll be down there at the Invasion Day event, right, with a stand, handing out leaflets, talking to people and connecting with people. And if you're in Brisbane, come and meet me. Come and see our crew. We only have a small crew in Brisbane, but yeah. And if you can chuck some dollars into the account, that'll help me feed these guys and transport people and everything we do. I've just been and organised 1,000 leaflets. And remember, I'm on a DSP too, so I can't afford to do so much. And doing this actually does cost me money monthly to do stuff, and other members of my team pay out for other things that we do on a monthly basis as well. So yeah, just remember, you know, we try and help where we can. We do what we can. We're not a charity. We can't help everybody. We can't save the world, but all we can do is keep fighting. Okay? All right, thanks guys. I'll talk to you later. See ya.